In 1998, under the pontificate of John Paul II, an extraordinary event captured the attention of the academic and religious world. For the first time, the Vatican's secret archives were partially made accessible. Among the many mysteries hidden for centuries, one in particular aroused great interest: the case of the convent of Sant'Ambrogio in Rome. The trial documents, buried in oblivion for over a century, have finally been brought to light, revealing a story that defies the darkest imagination. It was the year 1806 when Maria Agnese Firao, a controversial nun, became the focus of disturbing events in the convent. She was known for her alleged stigmata, which, according to her confessors, appeared on her hands, feet, and face. However, the reality turned out to be more disturbing. She wore an iron mask with dozens of nails inside it, which left her with permanent wounds and scars. This deliberate act fueled a sinister reputation and attracted real, if reluctant, attention from bishops and cardinals. But not everything was as it seemed. The Inquisition, always vigilant against phenomena of sanctity considered suspicious, looked with particular severity at cases involving women, fearing that they could undermine ecclesiastical authority. Not only was Maria Agnese at the center of scandalous accusations, but it was discovered that she had had 2 illegitimate pregnancies, the result of relationships with prominent men of the clergy. In 1816, she was finally expelled from the convent, but her departure did not mark the end of the corruption. Someone took up Maria Agnese's ugly legacy, pushing her methods to the extreme limit. The unpleasant events continued with those of Princess Katharina von Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, who definitely contributed to one of the most disturbing chapters linked to the convent of Sant'Ambrogio. Widowed for the second time at the age of just over 30, Katharina, in search of spiritual peace, decided to dedicate herself completely to God. Following the advice of his father confessor, Cardinal von Reissach, he chose the convent of Sant'Ambrogio, known for its rigorous cloister, where only doctors and confessors were allowed to enter. At first, life in the convent seemed to offer her the serenity she had longed for. However, he soon discovered that the reality was quite different. At the head of the convent was Sister Maria Luisa, a charismatic and manipulative figure, vice superior and mistress of novices. Maria Luisa claimed to receive divine visions, with Christ himself delivering to her relics, precious rings, and letters supposedly signed by the Virgin Mary. A real personality cult developed around her. She controlled her fellow nuns, practiced exorcisms, and accumulated almost absolute power. Behind this mystical facade, however, lay a system of corruption and abuse. Maria Luisa had sexual relations with a man known as the American, even though he was actually a character from northern Italy who wrote her explicit letters. He also spent long hours in spiritual retreats in his cell with his confessor, Father Giuseppe Peters. Katharina's suspicions grew when she noticed strange things in the convent, to the point of reporting her concerns to a second confessor, Father Lazzaroli. But he too, with the complicity of the vice superior, downplayed everything and informed Maria Luisa of the princess's confessions. Maria Luisa's reaction was implacable. She declared that she had visions that announced Katharina's imminent death. Soon after, the princess became seriously ill and began to suspect that the food intended for her was poisoned. Only thanks to the intervention of her cousin, an archbishop, did she manage to escape, finding refuge in the Tivoli estate. From there, she began to denounce the horrors of the convent. In 1859, Katharina turned to the Holy Office to denounce the convent's aberrant practices, including sexual rites that Maria Luisa called spiritual blessings. These rites often involved novices who, the night before taking their vows, took part in dancing ceremonies with highly ambiguous meanings. The abuses, justified as proof against the devil, also involved members of the clergy, who claimed that the devil had taken on female form to seduce them. The letters and relics attributed to divine visions turned out to be the work of a nun with exceptional handwriting, while the poisoning cases, including that of Caterina, were confirmed. Opium, corrosive liquids, mercury, and even powdered glass came from the convent pharmacy. After a 5-year investigation led by Inquisitor Vincenzo Salua, details of a perverse system came to light. False visions, psychological manipulation, sexual abuse, and even murder. The case of Sant'Ambrogio ended with a collective condemnation, leaving behind an echo of scandal and mystery that still fascinates and disturbs today. Sister Maria Luisa, the dark heart of the convent of Sant'Ambrogio, never found true redemption. After the scandal, she was transferred to another convent, but her power was now broken. Later, Sister Maria Luisa is said to have returned to her childhood home, where she lived the last years of her life in conditions of extreme poverty, an epilogue that reflected the decline of her power and ambitions. Even Giuseppe Peters, the controversial confessor, real name Joseph Coutin, escaped severe punishment. Relieved of his duties at Sant'Ambrogio, he nevertheless managed to become a theological advisor during the First Vatican Council, a position that left open questions about the full extent of the consequences for his crimes. An ambiguous figure, whose rise only served to underline the contradictions and complexities of ecclesiastical justice at the time. The story of the convent of Sant'Ambrogio, brought to light thanks to the courage of Princess Caterina von Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, remains a vivid example of how reality can surpass even the darkest fantasies. Sister Maria Luisa, the controversial figure at the center of the dark events at the Sant'Ambrogio convent, did not have a destiny of redemption. Even Giuseppe Peters, known by his real name Joseph Coutin, did not face particularly severe consequences. The story of St. Ambrose, made known thanks to the courage of Princess Caterina, is one of the most disturbing pages in the history of the Church. Buried for over a century in the secret Vatican archives, this story is not only an example of abuse of power, but also a warning of how religious fanaticism can be transformed into a tool of manipulation and oppression. Sister Maria Luisa, with her charisma, had built an empire of fear and control. His supposed divine visions and relics that he claimed to receive directly from heaven turned out to be mere fabrications, cleverly crafted to legitimize his rule. Through coercion, emotional blackmail, and intimidation, she had created a climate of terror among her sisters, even going so far as to organize sexual rites disguised as spiritual practices. The investigations conducted by the Inquisitor Vincenzo Salua, which lasted 5 years, brought to light an even more disturbing picture. It was not just sexual abuse and psychological manipulation, there were also attempted murders. Caterina herself was the victim of repeated poisonings, with the use of opium, mercury, corrosive liquids, and even glass powder, administered to eliminate her after her denunciations. Eventually, Sister Maria Luisa fell from grace, and her transfer marked the end of her power. However, many of the other protagonists in the affair, like Peters, managed to continue their careers, raising questions about the ability of the ecclesiastical institution to truly deliver justice. The history of the convent of Sant'Ambrogio thus became a disturbing symbol of the shadows that sometimes lurk behind the most sacred walls, leaving an echo of mystery and scandal that still fascinates and disturbs those who discover it. This story invites us to reflect not only on the abuses and manipulations of the past, but also on the importance of being vigilant against the danger of distortions of faith. It is a story that reminds us how the search for truth can shed light on the darkest shadows of our history. If this story has fascinated you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video. Your support helps us continue producing our content. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this disturbing story?